Would you support a mandatory environmental service for adults 18 to 30? Kind of like military service, but instead of fighting you must spend a few months on reforestation projects or ocean cleanup? Why or why not? I don't support involuntary anything. That sounds like slavery with extra steps. I feel like instead of forcing people to do so, they should be encouraged to. For example, if this was being forced by the state, instead of it forcing you to go, it would pay people to plant trees, clean beaches, etc. This is the way to go. Mandatory servitude is never a step in the right direction. I wouldn't make it mandatory, but maybe optional, and have it cover some school for the adults once they're done. No. Some of us need to earn a living. Who's going to pay our rent, etc. while we're doing this? Will we lose our house apartments if we're not earning money for months on end and can't pay rent? Also, however worthy the cause, forced labor is still slavery, and therefore completely immoral. Better to convince people to care enough to volunteer to help out in their free time, or pass legislation forcing companies to stop using plastic, etc. By forcing people to do this against their will, you will turn them off the cause and make them less likely to care for the planet, recycle, etc. in the long run. We already have AmeriCorps, where you serve for very little compensation other than a stipend and some money for college. I feel like forcing people to do it will just sour them against it. Also, I see people who make a career out of it duck shit up all the time, and I can only imagine how unproductive a bunch of people who don't want to be there in the first place would be. Also, the big thing we are lacking isn't manpower for most of these projects, but funding. There is a backlog of people who are passionate about nature and have education and professional qualifications that can't find work because no one wants to leave their jobs. If the government were willing to dump a bunch of money into funding more projects, then there would be more room in the budget to hire people who want to be there. No need to conscript people. So the old people who ruined the environment can force the young people to clean it up? Idiotic idea. Edit. Maybe remember ops topic before commenting. Post is about a mandatory program to fix things, not an argument if things need fixing or not. Guess it could also be said that a mandatory service program is drafting the public into cleaning up after corporations that made a fortune exploiting the earth, once again letting the responsible party sit back and do nothing to fix while they broke. A volunteer cleanup just helps politicians and corporations shift the blame towards personal responsibility and away from themselves. Picking up litter and planting trees won't save the world. But voting might. No, because that assumes that the state has a natural right to my free labor and time. That shit is for communist countries, not us. Military is not mandatory, it's also not a few months. Would you get paid and have benefits? If not, most people cannot afford a few months of not getting paid. No, I don't support mandatory anything. This is the most Reddit thing I've read in a long time. No, for pretty much every reason already given here. I would like to thank Hop though for being so civil and polite when responding to people. It's a much better way to discuss things than just screaming at each other. Do this work or get punished? You know, I think the 13th Amendment says something about that. No. Slavery is bad. No, because I don't think transporting millions of young people out of cities, towns and rural areas to these destinations and forcing them to work will be helpful. I get that they need to be made conscious of environmental issues, but I just don't think it would be effective, as in actually helping to get the work done. They could only do work that they wouldn't need a qualification or any special skills for. It would be a massive safety issue, making sure they don't drown cleaning the ocean or get injured planting trees, and it would cost massive amounts of money to pay, house and feed them all. I generally don't think it's effective or fair to govern over people's lifetime like this, whether it's military service or this type of thing. It would be much more effective to have qualified workers do the work effectively and have all other people study and/or learn other skills as quickly as possible so that you can cut back on benefits, give them the ability to earn money and care for themselves, and as a result also have them pay taxes sooner and longer, which will make it easier to fund the environmental projects. Mandatory? No. Especially not based on a military design where the government can dictate where you move and serve. Incentivized? For sure. A coordinated environmental task force jobs program along these lines, built for young and/or underemployed people, would be awesome. I'm not confident this would fix our global environmental issues without being accompanied by a serious effort on behalf of the corporate world to reduce pollution waste. But it won't hurt. And it's a good way to get people involved in conservation at an early age. Maybe it's because here military service is not mandatory, so I didn't grow up with that mentality, but I don't think that kind of service should be mandatory. There are some projects where prisoners kind of do that, but, while it would help, I think in the long run it would be better for people to do it voluntarily. Nothing that drastic, I'd say more like, heavily encouraged to do environmental work. I don't think it should be mandatory. The mandatory part is the problem. I would, however, support the use of on-duty military in those projects since that's the actual existential threat. Posting this in US time zones was a bold move. Mandatory? No. You shouldn't force people into things they don't want to do. But, I think maybe offer something that would entice people, like paying off 50% of their student debt. It seems like a good idea, but it really isn't. We should care more about the environment, but mandatory service would be very inconvenient. At this age we are dealing with stress after stress after stress. I would not want to have to put everything on hold for mandatory environmental service. While it's for a good cause, people might start to resent it and not want anything to do with the environment after. Just my opinion. There should be another way to get people to care more about the environment, but this shouldn't be it. This would be much more fitting as an alternative to regular incarceration. In the US we need a complete rework of prison systems anyway. Making prisoners accountable and functioning parts of society while serving time has great rehabilitation potential. Also, giving them minimum wage for commissary, savings, and their family on the outside would be great too. I oppose any form of conscription. There is going to be a mandatory in the same fashion in France soon for 16-year-olds. It's called civil service and it consists in working for society, which of course includes environmental matters. Nope. Because, nah. No, I am generally opposed to slavery. No. For the same reason I don't believe in the draft. When it comes to war, if your people don't want to fight, they shouldn't have to. Rich people throwing the bodies of other people at problems they create are ridiculous. If massive corporations weren't ducking up the planet, you wouldn't even have to be asking this question, and me being forced to involuntarily clean up their mess wouldn't be an issue. #X200B, why in the hell should I be forced to clean up the ocean while the people that did it are drinking scotch on a yacht watching me? While most high schools already mandate a certain amount of community service, so we all ready for 15 to 18-year-olds to do it? Isn't this already a thing with public schools? I know Chicago high school students are required to do at least 40 hours of volunteering. Forced labor. Why would this be okay? Love how all you people are saying mandatory service is un-American when people literally were drafted to fight in Vietnam and could still be drafted at any time. I don't support slavery of any kind. It is grossly unethical. No, because I believe in freedom. No, Because isn't mandatory service a fancier phrase for slavery? Not mandatory but get a free college education like being in the military. Forcing anyone to do anything is both morally wrong and ipso facto an inefficient allocation of resources. No matter how much you believe a cause is just and righteous, compelling others to serve that cause makes you an evil person. No. Forcing people to do things is stupid. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction.